Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Maureen O'Connor from Quilters Heaven in Northbrook, Illinois, and I am the Opinionated Quilter. Today's episode, number 76, is if you can take or print a picture of it, you can make it. How many times have you been looking on Pinterest and you like a quilt, but it's not a pattern? You contact the person and they say, no, I don't sell the pattern, or I don't own the pattern. And it's either that there's not a printed pattern and they made it up, or there was a printed pattern and the person who wrote it no longer makes it anymore. So there's several reasons why we might look at something and decide we want to make it. Several episodes ago, we talked about that you could find inspiration in anything. You could make a quilt from a pattern from a floor, and I'm going to show you mine. But there's many quilts that we want to make that we can't find a pattern for. And again, if you can take and print a picture of it, print a picture of it, I should say, you can make it. So first, what are you going to do as you look at that quilt? First, you need to look at the construction. Is the construction a traditional piecing method? Is it foundation paper piecing? And some people, rather than do foundation paper piecing, like to use the freezer paper method. And I will show you a little bit how that works. I'm not going to go into deep depth. Or is the last option is appliqué. So once you decide what the methodology is, then you go ahead, print out your picture, and then cut out your pieces. So let's get to the first example here of the traditional piecing. I'm going to swap out the whiteboard, be right back. On this one, it's the floor from an NBC show that was a crafters show. And I actually did take a picture of the floor, paused the TV and took a picture. I couldn't find it to show it to you today. But after taking the picture, I got out a pen and paper and drew out the pattern. And all it is a square that's framed, 5 flying geese, and then the square again. And then the next row is the 5 flying geese, a square and a square unit, and 5 flying geese. So once you figure out what the components are, then you have to do the math as to how big you want to make it. So if you start with a traditional flying geese size, and I didn't remeasure these, but I'm guessing they're 2x4 finished. So then this would have to be a 4-inch square in a square, and then this would be 10 because it's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So this would have to be a 10.5-inch square unfinished. So you just work with your paper and pencil, and you might need your calculator, but then you just take the components and make the math work. And I still haven't finished this, and this I started several years ago, but I still love it as much as I did when I started it. So I've got to pull that out and get this one done. Let's move on to foundation paper piecing. I started with seeing this on Pinterest. So I just took the picture, printed it out, and then I enlarged it a little bit, and that's what I used for my pattern. And I decided that this clearly had to be foundation paper piecing because you can see all the crazy weird angles. That's your first hint. I'm not looking at this and seeing any square and a squares or flying geese. It's all weird angles and clearly needs to be foundation paper pieced. So once I cut this apart, I've got all different units that I've cut apart into sections to foundation paper piece, and then I copy it onto my vellum, and this is just regular copy paper because I didn't want to use my vellum just to show you a picture that I then use this to foundation paper piece the unit. And with this I would say the one thing that I would do differently next time is when I take these pattern pieces, I would reverse them, because once you start piecing these using, this is your foundation paper, this is all reversed. So as I'm looking at what I made, this double triangle here is over on this side. And when these pieces all kind of look alike, I think it would be easier to piece it so that it looked like this so you could follow it better. If the pieces are extremely different, I think you have a less difficult time and might not need to reverse. I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, drop me a comment and I'll try to explain it further. So now I've paper pieced all my little units. I've decided I didn't want to do a Christmas. I didn't want to put a Christmas tree skirt here, and I didn't want to put a star on the top. I just wanted to make a tree. And this is what I ended up with. And it was quite fun to do. There's something that's not quite right here, but it doesn't bother me enough to redo it. It still looks like a tree to me. So I really like it. Now, let's say you wanted to do a Christmas tree. The pattern that started me on this road was Cindy Edgerton's Tall Trim a Tree. That's it, Tall Trim a Tree. She is retired. She did not sell her business. She didn't still keep up mailing out patterns to people. She just stopped. And I really liked the pattern. And I remember seeing it for years on my distributor, and now all of a sudden you can't get it. Well, that tree is like 20 inches wide by, I don't know, 72 maybe. And so that wouldn't work with copying pieces on an 8.5 by 11 sheet. So I'm actually having Office Depot printed out onto paper for me. And I'm going to use the freezer paper method to make it. And if you haven't done the freezer paper method, it's similar to foundation paper piecing, except for you don't sew through the paper. This is freezer paper that you take the shiny side, and press it to your wrong side of your fabric. Same here, shiny side, wrong side of the fabric. And then when you put the pieces together, you pin so that you sew just on the edge of the paper. You use the freezer paper as a guide as to where to sew. You don't sew through the paper. And the beauty of this method is you can keep reusing these pattern pieces. So that's my plan for Cindy Edgerton's Tall Trim a Tree. So when I get that done, I will share that with you. The last thing I want to show you is the appliqué. And that one I've shown you before, and one of the comments you gave me was, how do you make a pattern from a picture? And this is my baseball diamond, and this is going to be part of my Cubs banner, Chicago Cubs, if you're not a baseball fan. This is what I printed off of the computer. I just Googled baseball diamond images, and you get so many to choose from, and this is the one I decided to use. So this method is a combination of traditional piecing and applique, but certainly there are many images that you can print out that you would do all applique. So the first thing I did was I wanted to get the effect of the two colors of green. So I made strips of two colors of green and sewed them together. Then I cut out this part of the dirt part of the diamond and the pitcher's mound, and got those to the size I wanted to be on the copier. Used a double-sided fusible, cut it out, and then pressed it onto my diamond, And then all I did was do a little blanket stitch all the way around. And then to do the foul lines, I used a triple straight stitch there to do the foul lines. And then I added more fabric around the diamond to make it a big square. So there's many, many methods to take pictures and turn them into a quilt block or a wall hanging. There's lots of advanced things too that people do today that you'd have to take a class from an expert from to do. There, people take a photograph. One of my customers had her son and his fiance, and the quilt looks exactly like the photograph. That's so far beyond what I do, but it's out there and people do it. People also use thread and they just stitch over fabric. I don't know how their minds work. I can't make follow a picture and stitch just with stitching to make a picture. But those are things that people can do too, especially the artsy people out there. But for us more pedestrian quilters, these three options of applique, foundation paper piecing, and traditional piecing, if there's a quilt you see and you can't find the pattern, you really can do it. So I hope you got something from this episode. Please like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, happy sewing.